My horrible auntie secretly belittled and abused me growing up for being a lesbian. I then shocked everyone by not inviting her to my wedding, exposing who she really was and cutting her out of my life for good. Growing up, I was always the odd one out in my family. While my cousins played with dolls and toy trucks, I was more interested in climbing trees and playing soccer. I was a tomboy, and I didn't think much of it until I turned 13 and started to realize that my feelings for girls were more than just a phase. That's when Auntie Linda entered the picture, and my life would never be the same. Auntie Linda was my mother's sister, and on the surface, she seemed like a typical aunt, loud, boisterous, and always quick to offer unsolicited advice. But beneath that facade lay a woman who thrived on control and belittlement. As I started to come to terms with my sexuality, Auntie Linda became a looming shadow in my life, a constant reminder of everything I was supposed to hide. At family gatherings, she would make snide comments about those types of girls and how they were ruining the fabric of society. I remember one Thanksgiving when I was 15, and she cornered me in the kitchen. "You know, sweetie, it's just a phase. You'll grow out of it. You don't want to end up alone, do you?" Her voice dripped with condescension, and I felt my heart race in my chest. I wanted to scream that I was proud of who I was, but the fear of her reaction kept me silent. As the years went by, her comments became more frequent and more hurtful. She would often remind me of the proper life I should lead, filled with a husband and children, and how I was throwing it all away by being myself. It was as if she took pleasure in my discomfort, and I began to dread family gatherings. I would sit in the corner, trying to disappear as she held court, spouting her opinions on everything from my clothing choices to my friends. The emotional abuse was insidious. I started to internalize her words, believing that maybe she was right. Maybe I was a disappointment to my family. I felt like an outcast, not just in my own family, but in the world. I often found myself crying in my room, wishing I could be someone else, someone who fit Auntie Linda's mold of perfection. When I finally graduated high school, I made the decision to come out to my family. It was a terrifying moment, but I felt that I couldn't hide who I was any longer. I remember sitting at the dining room table, my heart pounding as I said the words, "I'm a lesbian." The silence that followed was deafening. Auntie Linda's face turned a shade of crimson, and I could see the gears turning in her head. It was as if she was trying to figure out how to respond without losing her grip on the narrative she had created. The weeks that followed were a blur of mixed reactions. My parents were supportive, but Auntie Linda didn't hold back. She called me one evening, her voice dripping with disdain. "You're going to regret this," she said. "You don't want to be the family embarrassment, do you?" Her words cut deep, but this time, I didn't let them fester. I hung up the phone, shaking with anger and frustration. Fast forward a few years, and I met the love of my life, Sarah. She was everything I had ever dreamed of, kind, funny, and fiercely supportive. When we decided to get married, I felt a wave of joy wash over me, but it was quickly followed by the nagging thought of Auntie Linda. I knew she would be furious if I didn't invite her, but I also knew that having her at my wedding would mean enduring her judgment and belittlement yet again. So, I made a decision that shocked everyone. I didn't invite her. I crafted a carefully worded message to my family, explaining my choice. I told them that my wedding was a celebration of love, and I didn't want any negativity or toxicity surrounding that day. I expected backlash, but the support from my parents and siblings was overwhelming. They understood my need to protect myself and my happiness. When the day of the wedding arrived, it was magical. Surrounded by friends and family who loved and accepted us, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace. As I stood at the altar, looking into Sarah's eyes, I finally felt free. I had broken the chains of Auntie Linda's emotional abuse, and I was ready to embrace my life fully. Later that evening, I received a call from Auntie Linda. She was furious, of course. "How dare you exclude me from your wedding?"
"I'm your family," she yelled.
I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "You may be family, but you've never treated me like one," I replied. "I refuse to let you belittle me or my love anymore. This is my life, and I'm done letting you control it." That was the last conversation I had with her. I blocked her number and cut ties completely. It wasn't easy, but I felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I realized that I had spent far too long allowing her to dictate my worth, and it was time to reclaim my narrative. Now, as I look back, I realize that Auntie Linda's words no longer hold power over me. I have built a beautiful life with Sarah, filled with love, laughter, and acceptance. I've learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about those who support and uplift you. I'm proud of who I am, and I won't let anyone, not even family, take that away from me again. So, to anyone out there struggling with a similar situation, know that it's okay to stand up for yourself. You deserve to be happy, and you have the right to choose who is in your life. Don't let anyone belittle you or make you feel less than who you are. Your happiness is worth fighting for. On to the next story. My lazy half-brother took advantage of my generosity and stayed at my house rent-free for almost a year. It wasn't until he called me selfish and mean for not letting him party and take drugs that I snapped and kicked him out for good. I never thought I'd be writing this, but here we are. I'm still reeling from the fallout of the past year, and I feel the need to share my story. It's a tale of family, generosity, and a lesson learned the hard way. Let me start from the beginning. My half-brother Sean and I have always had a complicated relationship. We share the same father, but our mothers are worlds apart. I grew up in a stable household, while Sean's childhood was filled with chaos. His mom struggled with addiction, and after a series of unfortunate events, Sean found himself bouncing between relatives and friends, never really having a place to call home. It broke my heart to see him struggle, so when he came to me asking for a place to stay, I couldn't say no. I offered him my spare bedroom. It was a modest space, but it was his for as long as he needed. I thought I was doing the right thing, and for the first few months, things seemed to be going well. Sean was grateful, and I felt like I was helping him get back on his feet. He promised he would contribute to groceries and help around the house. I believed him. At first, he kept his word. He helped with chores and even cooked a few meals. But as time went on, I noticed a gradual shift. The little acts of kindness turned into a sense of entitlement. Sean started to treat my home like a free-for-all. He would have friends over at all hours, blasting music and leaving the place a mess. I tried to be understanding, reminding myself that he was young and probably just enjoying his newfound freedom. But deep down, I felt uneasy. As the months rolled on, Sean began to change. He started to disappear for days at a time, only to return with wild stories of parties and reckless behavior. I knew he was experimenting with drugs, but I didn't want to confront him. I kept hoping he would come to his senses. After all, he was family, and I wanted to believe in the best version of him. But the tipping point came one fateful evening. I had just come home from a long day at work, exhausted and looking forward to a quiet evening. Instead, I was greeted by the sounds of loud music and laughter echoing from the living room. I walked in to find Sean and a group of his friends sprawled out on my couch, a haze of smoke lingering in the air. My heart sank. I felt disrespected in my own home. "Sean, can we talk?" I asked, trying to keep my tone calm. "Not now, I'm busy," he shot back, barely looking up from his phone. I took a deep breath, trying to remain composed.
This isn't a party house, Sean.
"I've asked you to keep it down before. Can you please respect my space?" That's when he turned to me with an expression I'll never forget, one of anger and defiance. "You're so selfish. You're just mad because I'm having fun, and you're stuck here working all the time. Maybe if you loosened up a little, you wouldn't be so miserable." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been nothing but supportive, and here he was, calling me selfish for trying to maintain some semblance of order in my own home. It was the culmination of months of frustration, and I could feel my temper rising. "Selfish? I've given you a place to stay for almost a year, Sean. I've been nothing but generous, and this is how you repay me?" I could feel my voice shaking, but I pressed on. "You need to get your act together. I can't keep living like this." His friends stared at me, wide-eyed, as the tension in the room escalated. Sean stood up, his face flushed with anger. "You know what? You're just a mean old adult who doesn't know how to have fun. I don't need your judgment." That was it. I snapped. "You need to leave.
Now?"
The silence that followed was deafening. Sean's expression shifted from anger to shock. "You can't be serious," he stammered. "I am. You have until the end of the week to find somewhere else to go." I felt a strange mix of relief and guilt wash over me. It felt like a weight had been lifted, but the thought of kicking him out was heartbreaking. He didn't say another word. He stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I stood there, shaking, as the reality of what I had done settled in. I had kicked my half-brother out of my home. A part of me felt justified. Another part felt like I'd just severed a piece of my family. The next few days were tense. Sean didn't speak to me, and I didn't reach out either. I focused on my work, trying to drown out the guilt that loomed over me. I was worried about him, but I knew that I had to stand my ground. I couldn't enable his behavior any longer. Eventually, the day came when he moved out. I helped him load his things into a beat-up car that barely ran. It was a quiet affair. No words were exchanged. As he drove away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I hoped he would find his way and learn from this experience, but I knew it was ultimately up to him. In the months that followed, I focused on my own life. I found new hobbies, spent more time with friends, and even took a long overdue vacation. I miss Sean, but I also realized that I had been neglecting my own needs for far too long. I learned that generosity has its limits, and sometimes, tough love is the only way to help someone truly grow. I still think about Sean from time to time. I hope he's doing okay. I hope he's found a better path. But I also know that I made the right choice for myself. Sometimes, you have to draw the line for the sake of your own well-being, even if it means letting go of someone you love. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.